Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to present to you the digital marketing transformation from process to performance. And with us, we have the co-founder and managing director of SaladStop, Adrien. Now, just a quick overview of ADA. ADA is a data and artificial intelligence company that designs and executes integrated digital analytics and marketing solutions. And we are based over 9 countries, and there's about 600 of us. Now, without much further ado, we're going to go through the content. When we talk about digital marketing transformation, we always talk about a few things. I mean, number one is the process and also the growth areas that we see in most of our clients. So for example, just to start off the process, we will do a lot of audit. So from a paid media process audit to competitive review, we also go through the internal processes, talking to the stakeholders, looking at their touch point and MarTech to understand what they're already invested in and how they can make more use of the platform they already have existing. We look at their first party data, which could be a lot, but not fully utilized. We also look at the data collection audit process, which is actually very important because if you get bad data in, you can't really act on them. Now, if you look at the next part of it with the discovery portion, where you do the customer discovery and design, and then you go on to do conversion rate optimization. Now, these two are key because you want to have a good customer experience, which will eventually drive good conversion rates. And then from there, you want to nurture the whole life cycle and then grow their lifetime value. The next part is actually MarTech implementation, which is the key, which is 2 parts of it. There's technology, there's also data. So after you implement the MarTech, we'll share with you how to actually operationalize it. The next part will be the data collection. How do we collect properly? How to get you the right insights and eventually activate. Now, the last part of it is actually one of my favorite, is actually talent. Training and enablement is really important. This is the part where actually you have to grow internally with your team and then eventually get the best out of your whole marketing experience. There are 5 areas of growth that we always look at. I mean, when we look at clients, there is actually strategy and execution. A lot of time, because of the rush for sales to look for more growth, a lot of effort has been paid on execution and very much on strategy. So it's not wrong because I mean there's this hustle bustles of life, but having a partner coming from time to time to be able to have a discussion, to be able to spar with you to understand that strategy will be quite interesting. I think we have quite good discussion with Adrien, and then we sort of build that new good food people, which you will see shortly. Technology is interesting. Technology is one of my favorite topics. I think a lot of time technology is not being maximized. And a lot of time when we go in, we look at how the technology is being used and actually how can we maximize the value that you derive from the effort that you already put in to setting up the technology in place. Next part will be first party data. Yeah. So first party data, a lot of us actually sit on lots of first party data, customer data, website data, CRM data, but a lot of time we are unable to act on it. So to be able to segment it well, to be able to cut it, to be able to activate on it will be key. Next up is the customer experience. So we always talked about it's not what you want to sell to the customer, it's really what the customer wants. And then customer experience comes first, especially in this era where technology is getting cheaper to implement and sort of level playing field. Last part, of course, talent. Upskilling of in-house talent is very important. Now, I'm not going to say much more from here. I'm going to let you hear from Adrien himself about his journey. So I'm going to just let you hear from the man himself. Over to you, Adrien. You're mute.
Okay, sorry, thanks, YC. So just to give everyone, I guess, a little bit of context and background on who we are and also maybe to give you a sense of what led us to ADA, what were some of the market conditions and what happened to us as a company, I guess, that made us think of a digital marketing transformation. So SaladStop actually started 11 years ago. And at that time, we were really just looking to provide people with a healthier option. I think in Singapore, at least, there weren't many options for salads or healthy food. And in that later evolved into creating a movement built around ecosystems and communities. And what I mean by that is people started asking us a lot more questions about where's your food from? Is it antibiotic free, hormone free? Is it free of pesticides. So I think that obviously made us realize that we were, something beyond just an F&B concept, and we, we touched a lot of lives and we touched a lot of different ecosystems. And then now really it's, a dream of creating a new generation of transparent tech-enabled health food brands with the utmost respect for the environment. So just to give you a little bit of a sense, we are a multi-brand company. SaladStop is sort of the flagship and the original brand, and that focuses really on the functional healthy side of things. Hebo is your feel-good healthy. So those are warm grain bowls. We've actually built it with a lot of tech in place. So, from ordering kiosks to a lot of the back-end operations as well. And then Wooshi is our really fun, very young mucky roll concept, and we would call that lifestyle healthy. And we have expanded quite a bit around the region. So our biggest markets are Singapore, the Philippines, and in Indonesia. And where we see most of the growth right now is Hong Kong, Vietnam, and especially around the region. So we're particularly excited about what is happening in Indonesia. And I think, again, with being a multi-brand strategy, I think that allows us to go much deeper into some of these markets. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of a sense, because obviously COVID impacted us quite a bit. We had, always shifted our business online, but COVID accelerated that. And, we were very used to obviously just having people come down from the office building and then grabbing a salad. But with work from home and obviously, with the lockdowns in Singapore and in other markets, we saw a huge shift online. So we were fortunate that we had focused on that and operationally were ready to shift our business online. But we really had to think about reaching customers differently now. And they were working from home, they were obviously cooking more and replacing their salads with, more, as you can see from this slide, from a lot more sort of supermarkets and other grocers. So in Singapore, at least when we entered what we called circuit breaker, the F&B sales plummeted by 53%, and even worse for some restaurants in particular, and supermarket sales shot up. So I think for supermarkets, I think that's really where we saw that, yes, lockdown was one issue, but I think in the long term, we were still concerned that, business might not come back fully. And this is exactly what happened. So even as things reopened, in July and August, the industry was still down by 30%. And so at the end of the day, this was really a sales issue and where we had to somehow increase our top line.
Yeah. And that's where we met.
And that's where we met. So this is what led us to ADA. So, again, as I mentioned before, that natural footfall that we would enjoy around our store was no longer there. And most of our business was just shifting to third-party delivery providers. So, Deliveroo, Foodpanda, Grab obviously saw a huge surge in demand. But the challenge there is that we obviously have no access to that data. We don't know who the customer is, where that order is actually going. And what we really wanted to focus on is saying, well, we have our own technology, we have our own platforms, and we want to start driving more sales towards that. So how could we do that? We also had new brands that most people were not familiar with, apart from SaladStop. So we needed to also build some awareness there. And so that's really one of the first asks that I guess we had of ADA. Then as we entered into this new space, I guess, for us, we really needed to track and measure that performance. So, we were not just going to throw money around and then not be able to set KPIs and measure that. So that was also a big part of the project, was really be able to come out of this knowing exactly what the return on investment of every ad dollar was. And finally, we also wanted to understand our customers better. So we wanted to understand their journey online. What would they click on? Why would they drop off? What would they follow? What campaigns worked? And this was probably the biggest learning in this whole project was, how do we start consolidating all of that data and starting to develop a single customer view?
Yep. And that's interesting. I think if you guys have not tried Hebo before, it's a very nice protein bowl concept by SaladStop. Actually, when I worked on the account, then I started to eat it. It's fantastic. Try the Impossible Bowl with the Impossible meat. So advertisement time. I think it's very interesting because I get to know of SaladStop way before this, and then they were one of the first to put a vending machine with a salad vending machine in schools. I think they were quite ahead of their time. And tell me more. I mean, Adrien, how do you actually pivot the business model during this time?
So I think, as you can imagine, we rely still quite a bit on office buildings, and as people didn't go back to work, a lot of the stores in the CBD, which were a big part of our revenues, sort of disappeared very quickly. And this is something we experience in other markets as well, particularly Hong Kong. That was the one, I guess, that we felt the impact immediately. But what we had is we had a few tools, and obviously we had some excess capacity during a period like this. So the first project that we embarked on was shifting our SaladStop app from purely being pickup to delivery. We had been working with a vendor for the last 5 years who had built the app, and so actually we just extended it to a delivery option. And we're able to launch that in June already, and that has really served us well. So, for a lot of our regular customers who can't go down to the stores anymore, they can order exactly what they want and really customize it to the point where they would experience in the store, and that we can do again because we've custom built this app to our operation.
Yeah, I think it's pretty agile.
Yeah. So this was, was a quick pivot. We did not. If it wasn't for COVID, we would have waited on this a little bit, but we obviously needed to reach people at home at this point, and we understood that this in the long term was just absolutely pivotal to our business.
Yep. And talking about home, there you have this new product offering, right? Yeah.
Yes. So Good Food People is still a very young brand, and still a work in progress. But this is our new e-commerce platform, which is predominantly based on plant protein. So we really focus on a lot of the new plant proteins that are on the market. Some of you might be obviously familiar with Impossible and Beyond, but there is a lot more coming online now. And what we are trying to do is really make that journey easy for people. As more and more people are cooking from home, and I think a lot of people are starting to look at a plant-based diet and at least shifting to a few more options during the week. So this is a pivot for us and a big learning. And again, our central kitchen had some excess capacity during this time, so it was a good time to trial. And we were also able to collaborate here with a lot of local influencers. And so this forms part of, I guess, an ecosystem for us that goes beyond our day-to-day brick and mortar business.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's that fast that you actually turn around and create a new offering. And tell us about Cloud Kitchen.
Okay, so this was sort of the biggest success story for us, in the last few months. What we noticed was that a lot of our deliveries were going to the east. We didn't have really a strong presence in that part of town yet. But what we started looking at is just after the circuit break in Singapore, we looked for space, around. We knew exactly which location we had to aim for, which provided us with the best delivery radius. And so we landed on Tanjong Katong Road, and we were able to get a shop house there. Took over the first floor for a collective cloud kitchen. So what we did here is we actually combined all 4 of our brands under one roof. And from a customer standpoint, it's great because you can order from all 4 brands in one basket. And this was probably also the most successful project with AGA, or the most successful campaign, at least, that we launched, because our challenge here was to say, well, yes, we can generate this volume from the third-party delivery companies, but this is really an opportunity for us to have our own platform and drive traffic to the area, right? And with just everyone living in the East Coast within a 10-kilometer radius, you're looking at a huge population and perfect target market for our brand. So we really took it on and said, well, let's start building some awareness for the Good Food Hood brand, and also starting to test various campaigns. So we did free deliveries, we did videos, pictures. We changed it based on the different brands and different customer profiles, and it's been a roaring success. So it's been nice to see that we've been able to drive a lot of our own traffic to this and not just rely on the third parties. And again, with that data, we've been able to retarget our customers and do a lot more and understand, again, our product and offerings a lot better.
Yeah, I think here's where I really enjoy. I think our performance marketing team was working with you, and we were in the boardroom trying to crack the mechanics. I think you are very agile to say, okay, let's try this new mechanic. And then you have your data analyst quickly cutting the number and say, okay, we can actually run with this promo mechanic and off we go. So I think with the agileness, I think that is really interesting. And then I think we also, with your collaboration, in that way, we can actually launch a media campaign that will drive the traffic to your order site. So good. Yeah. Then let's talk about that. I mean, that's actually really about balancing the distribution channels, right? Yep.
Exactly. And I think this, I mean, boils down to, at the end of the day, digital marketing is about data. And if you don't own any of that data, you are just going in blind. And I think that's for us. I mean, we're a very data-centric company. We make a lot of our decisions based on that. And I think when you look at digital marketing and especially the way we run that part of the business in this sector, I think we need to own some of that data. And so I think, third-party platforms obviously give you great exposure, and we will always continue working with them. But I think the future for us is also building our own capabilities and understanding our customers a lot better and being able to customize. So, if you look at this table, I think obviously the customization part for us being a concept that, but depending on the brand, we generate 50% of our sales at least from custom orders. So people love to create their own and really be able to tweak their favorite grain bowl or salad or sushi roll. So I think that again leads us to then develop our own solutions, and from there I think we needed to be able to access that data. And so again, I think building things in-house in that sense is very important to us.
Yep. And I think that's interesting also. I think when you look at the cost of it and the margins of all three platforms, I think eventually you would like to own as much as is possible. So and then it's really then balancing out through the three channels. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. So I think it's very interesting as we start with any digital transformation project. I think it's always about identifying and defining the transformation target. And I remember sitting with Adrien and saying, okay, what are the key targets that we need to look out for? And I think it needs to be tangible, because at the end of the day, we are here to make a business impact. And if you look at it, I mean, everything from new customer acquisition and increasing the customer lifetime value, improving marketing efficiency, improving productivity. I mean, productivity is key because I think Adrien runs a very, very lean team. And I think having the extra hours to actually focus on the business is actually important. So as much as we can, we automate a lot of the processes, especially the manual data processes. And I think not only building a single customer view, but having it really actionable, that is really, really important. And of course, enablement again, like my favorite topic. So we always start with the customer. So I think when we look at it, I think the virus has changed quite a lot. I mean, Adrien talked about people actually starting to cook at home. So we saw customer disappearing from the database. I mean, they no longer come to the store. So what we did, we actually start calling them up. And I think we always start with the customer to redesign the customer experience for them. And if you look at it, I mean, what we did was we have a qualitative search and we also have a quantitative survey with the customer. So we call out to understand what they're cooking now at home and how can our good food people offering actually serve them better. And as the market open up, I think we see a lot more of that coming back to the office, and then we can see them coming back and use the app. So I think it's quite interesting as we have a very holistic view of the customer. Now we also map out the current state of the customer. And then on the right side, what you will see is actually we have been working together to actually redesign the experience for the new SaladStop and the whole family of offering. I think it was quite interesting experience. And we map out contact strategy from, as a new user, I want the customer experience to be good. So we derive a contact strategy from your onboarding all the way to you being picked of your consumption to actually getting you to win back if you're looking to lapse. Now, I think one of the very good thing that I appreciate was that the working relationship was really good. So I think there was this morning, I think it was a Friday, and 10 a.m. in the morning, we were talking about like coming out with this paper prototype of how we can actually make conversion better. And we just sketch it on a piece of paper, my favorite IKEA paper. So we just sketch it and then Adrien say, okay, well, I think we can get this done. And then immediately we called the developer at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I think within a few days, we got this up and running. And then we see a lot more conversion happening. And I think that this is the agility that I think is very interesting. And it is very necessary in this era, especially everything has moved online. After you design the customer experience, I think the next part is to find the data that needs to fuel it. So we talk about the single customer view, and it's really being able to aggregate your data from the website, the store data, app, transaction, traffic drivers, where do they come from? Are they reacting to your email or push notification? And what kind of customer profile are there to enable you to create those CRM segments? Now, there are many ways beyond just the first-party data. I mean, there are third-party data enrichment. For example, ADA has a data set, which if you have an app with that ID, you can actually match with us, and we give you information about this customer beyond the ecosystem. So, I mean, whether this customer has a fitness app, whether this customer is a parent because they use a parenting app, and those are important information for you to personalize. So personalization is big, or only with the right data. So having single customer view is key for you to move forward your customer journey. And what we did next was really to look at all the touch point audits. So we look at Google Business. That's very interesting that we realized that at some of the stores, where are some of the traffic coming from? And Google Map is actually a great discovery tool for a lot of customers. They look for salad. So I think one of the interesting things is that I think SaladStop was already doing a good job setting up the Google Business. We are just adding a lot more information onto it, so to make it more searchable. We have a Google Data Studio tool, which we actually connect quickly to their web analytics to allow them to actually find insights quickly. So that's one tool that we always do for all our clients. And we also look at social insights, what's performing, what's not performing well, how do we actually drive our engagement. And of course, the food delivery platform. I mean, Order has quite interesting dashboard, and then that's where we take a look at it, and then we understand some of the trends, and then we sort of map the data back and see what else can we do to improve the business. And that leads us to also looking at the first-party data that we talked about. I think this is really interesting. So when we look at it, we did an RFM analysis to see who was the high audience. I think one of the interesting findings we had also was the customer purchase trend. Who's trending up, who's trending down, who's going likely to lapse. Now, of course, we have taken the anomaly of circuit breaker, which was between Jan to June, which actually sort of caused disruption. But by removing that mindfully, actually, we can get quite a good result. The last one that is blurred out at the bottom is actually the loyalty and discount analysis. I think we look at how we can actually reward our customer, but not to the point of spoiling them. So I think this is something that was interesting. As we discuss more, then we realize that there's a value segment that actually is very reactive to value, and how can we actually attract them and actually not cannibalize our high loyal customer. So I'll pass this to Adrien, because I think beyond just the customer data, a lot of operation data is important. And I think in this project, we partner with a local data startup called ThinkVal. I'll let Adrien share a little bit more on this.
Yeah, I think this was, I mean, we've obviously had our own BI tool, and we have our own data analyst in-house. And so, you know, we crunch numbers, and I think we try to make as much sense of our operational data while still having some data from customers predominantly coming through our loyalty app. But what we were able to overlay on top of this was this, I guess, much bigger picture with ThinkVal, and they have been able to create dashboards for us, which bring in all of our Google Analytics and Facebook data. So any campaign that we run, we understand a lot more where the customers are going and be able to retarget them that way, and all again through this tool. But it's just fascinating once you have all these data points from these third-party sources as well that come in, to look at it in a lot more detail and to start connecting the dots and making sense of it. So working with ThinkVal has been great. I mean, we've only just partnered up with them for about 2 months, but I think ADA really kind of helped open our eyes up to what pieces were missing and what data we needed to capture, and also what the beauty of all of that coming together. So it's still obviously a work in progress, but I think it's something that really helped us identify the gaps.
Yeah, I think in terms of the data point, I think there's the marketing part of things, there's the operation part of things. I think weather, manpower, number of riders, and everything, those actually impact a lot of things. And I think having that good visualization really allows you to actually see that. And actually, after you have consolidated your data, the next thing is to activate it. So having a single customer view actually allows you to actually then load it up to your own channels like email marketing or SMS or push notification. You load your customer data with the attributes, and then you can do your own segmenting and push from there. The other part will be paid media. Custom audience usually drive you a lot of engagement. Don't waste that opportunity. If you have people who are non-reactive to your emails, use them on your paid channels as custom audience, and usually you'll get quite good results upfront. Now, this loop over here is quite interesting. This is where you actually drive a lot more of the test, measure, and repeat. So we test with new formats, we test with email, we test subject header, we test almost everything. So that is actually the culture of we're trying to build into the team. So I think it's been quite an interesting journey. Adrien has told me that, don't worry, just give them an assignment. So I give the marketing team an assignment, and every week, so it's like, okay, this is what you need to do. Come back with the A/B test format, and then they'll come back, and then they get stressed out. I say,
what's the size of the pie? No, how much audience is there in there? Do you think that 10 people will react to your email? So I think that that's something that is very interesting as how we evolve the team. And I think the team is in good shape. I really enjoy it when they ask tough questions back to me and say, YC, are you sure this is the right way? Should I blast to everyone because we have a small audience size? And I say, yes, I mean, that's the right question to ask. And it has been a very enjoyable journey. I think it's good to see the team grow across time. And here's, after the data part, we always look at technology, which is the fit for purpose and ready for the future. And we always look at two parts. I mean, we go into any type of business, we look at the existing system. In terms of proficiency, have you used up a lot more of the features? Have you actually maximized your investment? So here we look at their email marketing software and realize that there's a few areas where it can improve. And then we just tell the team to actually try this out for the next email blast. At the bottom, we always look at the marketing technology ecosystem as a whole. We'll map out the current ecosystem, and we'll then advise for the next version of it. And then we'll do a calculation matrix to share with the clients to say, hey, which one should we invest in based on budget, maturity, and also the customer experience you need to deliver. Now, Adrien, tell me, what have you learned, I mean, in terms of technology? I mean, so far, yeah, you have been quite progressive and very early adopter. Yeah, tell me, what have you learned? Yeah.
So I think, and it sort of relates to your previous slide. I think, for us, the existing tech system that we had built and the user experience that we tried to create very much replicates what you would have in store, right? So again, most of our traffic was still offline. We had a lot of existing regular customers that knew exactly what they wanted. They understand the menu. They were able to download the app and order directly. And it's highly customizable. They were able to save their favorites in there. It's a simple checkout process, etc. So and that was the mindset that we were in, right? So technology for us was really very much tied to the operation and be able to then scale up what we had again from a brick and mortar standpoint. But I think moving forward, I think everything that obviously has happened in the last 6 months and moving to being a lot more agile and looking at performance marketing, etc., I think really led us to rethink our whole tech ecosystem and how especially the front end is built. I think from a user experience standpoint, I think, when you look at Grab and Uber and Lazada and of this world, I think they've put the bar so high now that I think, customers expect a seamless experience. They expect a common login across platforms. They expect a seamless checkout experience, especially, and then obviously on our side, we need to be able to measure and track everything. So the way things are built now, I think is quite different than when we first started 5 years ago. And I think, as we now look at our tech stack, I think it needs to be obviously much more modular, flexible, open. And I think obviously as we scale up, we need to be able to internationalize that. And that's where we need to be able to then work with multiple partners, right? So if it means working with a tech vendor in Indonesia, because we need to do a local payment integration, our whole ecosystem needs to be open to that. So those are a lot of the gaps that we identified with ADA. And I think, again, from a performance marketing standpoint, we needed to, and we still need to at this point, rebuild some of the pieces to then really be able to measure the entire customer journey and the return on investment that we would expect from these ad campaigns. So I think the mindset that we go into 2021 with is very different than what we started this year with. And I think ADA, obviously with their specialization in this field, really opened up our eyes to how we would need to reorganize things and what that would mean as well moving forward.
Okay. So let's talk about my favorite topic, growing talent. So
yes.
I'm going to start off with Adrien. So what's your vision for growing talent? And I think when I work with you, it's very interesting that you have in-house certain skill sets. Tell me about the thought process.
So, I think as a small business, we obviously, hire relatively young people, sometimes a little bit inexperienced, but with a great attitude and willingness to learn. So I think, that's a lot of how we built things over the last 10 years. And I think, especially with the younger generation, look for a lot of growth opportunities. And I think just embarking on this project alone, I think, we've seen the team grow tremendously. And I think, we believe very much growing within and promoting within. So that's been a big part of how the culture, I guess, that we have within the organization. And I think a lot of why people are excited to work here. So Having obviously worked with YC and the team, I think there were a lot of synergies there, and I think the team really enjoyed the whole experience. And I think that again, hopefully, now allows them to take on the reins and do it themselves.
Yep. Well, okay. I really enjoy the process. Also, I think it's quite fluid. I think working with the team, and I think I liken it to be like a personal trainer. I think the way that we work together, let's work on what's needed for this week and next week. And I think it's a lot to do with maybe the model that we collaborated on. I think we came out. I mean, when you first shared with me that enablement is one of the key challenges that you want to tackle, I think then we thought about how about we do an embedded to enablement model. So in a way that my team becomes part of your team. I mean, not really a secondment model, but actually working very closely and to be able to share that with the team. And I think there's a lot of, I think that we had about 6 to 7 knowledge sharing sessions. And then we shared a little bit about the education needed in terms of the basic digital marketing, the technology involved. And then we went on to a very specific topic that is actually practicals. So like practical, like Facebook ad buying, why do you do this and why do you not do that? And a lot of these are recorded in Zoom so they can be re-ingested again later on. And it is where it is very, very tailored to your team. And I think, of course, we created the regional playbook, which eventually you can democratize this knowledge to the rest of your region. I'll share a little bit about this project in terms of the process itself. It's quite interesting because I think we spent the first 7 weeks actually doing a lot of workshops and understanding the internal and external forces that governs the business. And then we also did a performance marketing stream. I think what is interesting is the next 8 weeks that came about, which was interesting. It was an empty slate. So what we did was actually we worked with the team on a weekly basis to plan out what's needed for the next week. And that was really interesting because we actually gear up and tailor that to the client as we move along. So this is where we do the whole process to performance. And I think it's been a very interesting journey. I think we have driven some quite interesting results. I think in terms of new customer acquisition, we have acquired about 58% for the Cloud Kitchen, and it has been on a regular basis. Lifetime value have increased by more than 20% as we tackle in how to remarket to them and actually how to do the CRM. Marketing efficiency went up about 3 times. And in terms of productivity, I think that's the interesting part. I think when we connect the data together, I think your analysts actually spend 40% less manual work time to be able to cut those data. I think now we have the single customer view, and it's being connected to the marketing automation. And I think in terms of enablement, your team has this cadence of actually starting to run on their own, being able to ask each another question and eventually be able to report on the right matrix. So it has been quite an interesting journey, in a very short span of time. And I will ask Adrien this question. What advice do you have for other companies who's going to embark on this digital marketing transformation?
Well, that's a big question. I guess, I think the first part would really be, are you ready for this? Because I think there's, it is quite a big task. I think, okay, we started from a pretty low base. Again, as I mentioned, we did not have that much experience in the agile performance marketing space, but it was a big project to undertake, especially for a small team like ours. So I think, looking at the strength of your team, the bandwidth that you have, I think is important, because I think, there's a lot to learn, and then obviously there's a lot to implement. And I would say the second part is that, how relevant is this to your business and to your industry, right? And I think the part, I think for us, a lot of the areas that YC covered during this presentation, I think apply to us, right? And I think we needed to look at, awareness building, we needed to look at performance marketing, we needed to look at a lot of different pieces. That might not apply to every business. For some, they might be looking more at just awareness building, where they don't need to drive more sales. Again, that's maybe one specific part that one would look at. And I think, we are obviously very consumer focused. We have our own technology. So there were a lot of pieces of the puzzle here that we need to bring together. And so I think the project scope for us was huge. I think we've come a long way. To see how far we've come in 4 months and what you can achieve in 4 months is amazing. But I think the senior management there really needs to sort of think, how are we going to execute this, and which parts of a project like this are really key to the organization, and also making sure that it really becomes a mindset shift for the company as well, because we were very committed to this on every level. We made sure that YC's team would spend days on end with us, just teaching us and repeating things over and over. And I think, it does take a while to sink in. It does take a while for the team to demonstrate that they've actually understood it. And, many times we've actually had the team present directly to YC to make sure that we didn't have to go back to him in 6 months to say, oh, forgot how to do this. So I think just an embedment also takes a while. I think it is just part of the process. And that's really where the commitment from everyone has to be there. And I think, in making sure that you understand how this fits into the long-term vision for the company.
Well, I really like the last point of commitment. I think in terms of that, I think I will see you, Catherine and Franz, in most of the meetings. And then the working teams work very closely with us when it comes to the assignment and also actually being able to discuss the plan for media and everything else. I think that itself, a lot of times when I do some other projects, the client doesn't have time. So sometimes the boss doesn't turn up. Sometimes the working team say, oh, it's being cancelled last minute. I think it's this value of each another's time that's very, very important, and that commitment. Yeah, so thank you. It's been great partnership in this project. And if we look back at it, in terms of the transformation practice that we have, I think there's a lot of times that we tackle the 5 areas. Number 1 is the digital strategy and also the practice. 2 is the market consultancy of things, to be able to find the right tech stack for you. We get a lot of questions from a lot of our clients, or even in the panel now, I can see questions about technology. It is about like finding the right stack for you based on maturity, budget, and also customer experience you need to deliver. So sometimes it's building a custom stack, sometimes it's mashing together what you can already find in the market. Data discovery is something that we are very proud of because we are data practitioners. Customer experience design is definitely key because if you want to be differentiated, and that is where you should be. And training and enablement is something that we really love doing. I think working with the right mindset, with the right clients, with the growth mindset, that will be very, very interesting. So that's sort of some of our 5 transformation practice. And I'm going to start with the Q&As. Yeah, so I'm going to just look at my screen on the left here. Adrien, are you ready?
All set.
Okay, so let me just go through some of the questions we have received from the registration first. So I think one of the key questions is, what are the good example of digital marketing for real estate platform business? So I think this is slightly differentiated. It's retail, but not really retail. I think in terms of marketing for real estate platform, I think we have done it for a few clients. I think one of the key issues is having the right data, knowing, for example, in the last 4 weeks, who have visited showroom in Singapore. A geolocation data will allow you to be able to build a very customized audience to a custom audience that is ready to buy a property. And that's something that we have been doing for 2 of our clients that has been quite well. And I think that's something that you could reach out to us for. Here's one question for actually Adrien. So I think, Adrien, the question is, how does SaladStop manage their presence during this time? Can you understand how do you manage this? I assume that this is talking about a circuit breaker period. How do you actually maintain your presence?
So I think one was obviously our social media presence. So I think that is always active, and I think is a big way of how we reach out to customers. We obviously also do EDMs and then target people on a pretty personalized level. So I think this is where the segmentation came into play. And then I think lastly is just trying to collaborate as well. So I think this for us was a big theme this year. We really worked with people from looking at upcycling ingredients in Singapore. We're launching our own beer in December using some of our recycled ingredients. So that I think is again where I think a crisis like this sort of brings out the best in people in many ways. And for us, it was a huge opportunity to also reconnect to our local market. Obviously we're based here. We travel a lot normally, but this grounded us, and it was a great opportunity for us to reconnect with a lot of our peers and sort of form new bonds. So I think that from a customer standpoint, kept us quite engaged and allowed us to also tell a story, right? I think that's a big part of also what we try to do is build content and try to differentiate ourselves and stay connected to customers, as they're not obviously able to visit our stores as much.
Yeah. So from the same person who asked the question, He has a tough one. So he says, how do you differentiate yourself when the end product does not differ much from the competition? Now, I would have challenged that he has to try the salad for himself, but I'll leave you to answer that, Adrien. Yeah.
No, it's a very good question. And I think, that's, where obviously on an operational front, we spend a huge amount of time on SOPs and making sure that our product does stay very consistent. And, we have a central kitchen and we have, worked on that front for the last 10 years. So I think that allows us a certain level of consistency. But then honestly, I think the rest is always comes down to innovation. So I think, where we, I guess, pride ourselves on is being able to always think of new products and think of new ways of pushing those out to market. And you can see from the example that we showed in this presentation, we were always trying to reinvent ourselves. And I think, COVID was a great example of that. I think we didn't just assume that our product would sell itself. We tried to, again, collaborate with many people across Singapore and elsewhere. And I think, again, understanding how the market moves and looking at that very carefully obviously keeps you one step ahead, right? So, we've seen that the convenience and things shifting online was just going to happen, right? No matter if COVID had hit, this was just going to be a gradual transformation of the industry. So we had prepared ourselves for that. We also had started preparing ourselves for an e-commerce platform for a while, just never knew when we were going to launch it. COVID was that perfect accelerator. So I think, as you constantly try to evolve and keep abreast of what the market is looking for, and I think especially customers demand a lot these days. And I think if you're able to match that, I think it just keeps you ahead of the curve.
Yep. Yeah, and it's very interesting. I think this is the same audience also asked the same question. I think he asked, how have you done to pivot during the lockdown? I remember you closed down 2 or 3 of your store temporarily to actually move the resources around, and you open up your cloud kitchen. He also asked, assuming organic was an option when SaladStop was launched, what factor would have resulted in a non-organic menu? So that's a quite interesting question. Yeah.
So just to make sure I understand the question, so you mean more from a product standpoint, if we had launched as an organic product, right? It's a very good point. I think that was, from day one, we were very clear that this model, at least the model we were developing, had to work based on economies of scale. And when we looked at, organic products, we generally felt, and from our analysis, that the price point would be too high to reach a wide audience. And we always built this for as wide of an audience as possible. And that's where we believe that with volume and a larger presence can come impact or change. So, to give you one example, the first 2 years, we had to source our chicken as anyone else would from regular suppliers. But after 2 years, once we had reached certain volumes, we were able to go to a farm directly in Malaysia and say, look, we will guarantee you 100 kilos a day, but we needed to be antibiotic hormone free. So, those are of many examples like that, where we do this in across markets, where with volume, we can also make change. So we don't call ourselves organic. They're products that are not, but we ask a lot of questions, especially to our suppliers. And if we have the option, we switch immediately. And sometimes that comes at a higher cost, but I think we obviously see that there's a greater and greater demand for it. But I think at the core, the most important thing, and this is kind of what we live by, is to always be as transparent as possible. So, we were not afraid to say that not all of our products are organic and they're not perfect. But again, we've been able to enact quite a bit of change over the last 10 years.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. I think as part of our customer research, we went down to some of your stores. I remember sitting down there and anyone queuing up for that and say, hey, can I buy you a free lunch? They say, what? Free lunch? And I said, yes, free lunch. And you tell me about your salad experience. And one interesting thing that they can actually tell is that when they eat SaladStop, they can feel that the quality is very different. So, when they go to other stores around the area, they're like, okay, maybe today is not like the same quality. But they always come back to you. Yes, you have a premium to pay, but they still believe it's reasonable for the quality that they get. So I think that's more of a food question, not really related to digital marketing transformation, but I think audience curious. There's someone who's asking, why isn't there a SaladStop shop in Malaysia? I think you have, right?
We did, and unfortunately, I think this was the one, I guess, impact of COVID for us, was that we had just opened our Malaysia operation last year. So we opened 2 stores in KL, and I think, you know, as we were ramping up the business with the lockdown there and everything else that ensued after that, it was just too hard to sustain the business. So unfortunately, we had to close our operation in Malaysia. There's no reason, obviously, that we wouldn't start it again. We've built all the fundamentals, the infrastructure's there, everything's ready to go. So it's just going to be about the right time and catching the market at the right time as well. I think, you know, even when we opened, we realized that it would still take a while to grow, and we needed to be a little bit patient in Malaysia. So, but yes, obviously, you know, being right next door, we're very hopeful that that's our next market.
So that store used to be next to our office. I mean, in KL, ADA. So I look like you have a fan in the audience space. So I think it's like there's opportunity. But we will talk soon. Yeah. So on that. So wow, there's a lot of questions. I really enjoy this. I think it's quite interactive. So let me take this one from Kelvin. I'll ask Adrien this. How long does it take, in your perspective, to make business decisions based on data? And side question, who do you feel, bracket, role-wise, is required to be part of this data digital frontier? I think you have the perfect answer for that.
Yeah, very good question. So, I mean, we move very quickly. So I think, you know, once we pick up a few data points and it points us in a certain direction, obviously we keep digging, but we are also very open to A/B testing. And I think this is, again, the beauty of working online is, you know, you can put up an ad, and if it doesn't work, the next day you change it, you let it run for a little bit, you tweak it. It's something that we have gotten more comfortable with, I think, as well. I think it's something we had to learn. And the way the team is built. So I think this is probably where having a younger team, people that are used to thinking on the go, thinking out of the box as well, I think is important, and cultivating that mindset. So, I mean, for us, we have a data analyst on board. He actually, you know, was a graduate with a marketing degree, but has developed his skills in that field. So not an engineer by trading per se, but I think someone who just grasps things on the fly. He's very, very good at learning things. And I think, again, through this project, his focus wasn't on executing the campaign per se, because that would be left to the marketing team, but he would really be the one that would highlight, you know, certain data points that would be interesting, make the connections, and then present that to the marketing team and say, well, you know, with this data, what should we do?
Yep. You're super lucky to have him. Better keep him a secret. I mean, if not,
I won't mention his name on here.
Yeah. So it was very interesting. I gave him an assignment, and then he cut. Excel is his favorite tool, right? And then he started to break down what's the last time he's seen the customer, how much it's worth talking to this customer for because of a high spend, low spend, and whether it's a regular spend. So it was very interesting. Just without telling him much, he was able to do it, and I believe that that's really a good talent you have on board. I'm going to take this question about public transportation. So from a public transportation perspective, where most of our transactions are happening offline, more than 80%, no data are collected. What are your thoughts of approaching and identify this segment so we can better have a holistic view of our customers and therefore to serve them better with our product and services? So I think this is a very interesting part. I'll answer it in a few ways. Number one, if you have an app that you can provide a service, so there's a value exchange for your customer to actually download an app. Now, with the app, you can actually find out a lot more about them. You can do progressive profiling. You can actually connect it to ADA's data set to find out more about their profile. You could also run customer interviews. So go old school, right? I mean, like the Japanese say, Genchi Genbutsu. So you go see it for yourself on ground. You start talking to people, and I think that is something that will start to get you insights, surveys. So an assortment of data points will get you that answer. I think even for Adrien, when I was working with him in the last 15, 16 weeks, I think he used not only ADA, but he used a lot of data sources from a lot of partners to actually make decisions. So I'll be walking into a meeting and say, yeah, I got this new report, you know, from this partner who has helped us, and then we're going to make this direction change. And I was like, wow, okay, that's quick. Let's devise a plan and off we go. So I think that there's quite an interesting set of data points out there, and a lot of partners which maybe are open to do a barter trade with you in terms of data or in terms of services. Wow, okay, here's one from Andy, what are the SaladStop future business plans? Wow, okay, this might be a bit tricky. Okay, with youngsters willing to spend on healthy food. Yeah, so yeah, not a difficult question.
I mean, I think obviously the trend towards healthy food is here to stay. I think we're very, very excited, especially with the traction that we're getting in international markets. And I think, people thought we were crazy opening our first market to be the Philippines, but I think that has proven to be a huge success story. So I think what we're very focused on now, especially with 2 new brands, is actually going a lot deeper into the markets that we're already in. So we've built the infrastructure, the team's there. We understand the dynamics of the market a lot better than obviously when we just started with SaladStop. So we see a lot more pockets of opportunity now, and we feel that just in our backyard, there's so many opportunities, and just when you add the population of just Southeast Asia alone, I think there's enormous potential for a company like ours to focus just on the healthy food space. So that would be one, and I think in the longer term, I think we really want to be sort of the personalized nutrition company of Asia, and so what I mean by that is being able to personalize a meal based on someone's dietary needs, their preferences, their maybe medical condition. So that for us is the long-term goal. Obviously getting there will mean a few more pieces of the puzzle to come together, but that would be, I guess, the dream, is to connect everyone within our ecosystem, from our farmers to the team on the ground, to our customers, to doctors, and really create something that is regional as well.
Yep. Oh, so I'm going to take this one next. So there's a question on what are the best way to measure the return on investment for the marketing spend focused on the digital marketing. I think this is one that I think we also had this discussion. Should you put money behind awareness? Should you drive conversion? What do you balance it out, right? And I think that's a very interesting part. So I think we start off with number 1, what's your objective? 2, what has been your baseline? So I think there is also this minimum ad spend that you need to do before you get results. And I think without that minimum ad spend, it's really quite tricky. So I think it differs from a case by case basis, but starting with that benchmark, we're able to actually optimize across time. And I think we have a lot of learnings. I think there's 3 parts to it. There's the data part of it, there's the targeting part of it, and there's actually the creativity part of it. And I think here's where Adrien having an in-house team is quite interesting. One day I went into their boardroom, and then they have almost everyone, even the finance guy, coming in to chip in to be part of the photo shoot. So he has his hand there, and everyone else is chipping in. So I think that's very interesting. It's a very cozy environment where I think everyone works together, and I think everyone's part of it. It's really, really fun to work on it. Let me see. You mentioned COVID-19 accelerated your digital transformation process. So how long did it take you from the time you decide to pivot the business to seeing real performance and results? Wow. Okay.
Gosh, good question. I mean, I think we are literally just starting to see results. I think we've been in this project now for 4 months. The one, I guess, result that I guess we would point towards at this point is good foodhood, and that was really number one, like YC said, was just building a little bit more awareness and just trying to drive some traffic, and then now is actually really starting to take some of those that have ordered and retargeting them and trying to build them into kind of long-term customers. So that would be the first one. I think apart from that, it's actually us now taking all the data that we're collecting on the digital marketing front and what we already have, and continuing to make sense of that and to formulate, especially our plan for 2021. So with this new mindset that we have going into next year, I think that's really where we're going to continue testing. And I mean, I think that's the beauty of it. We'll make mistakes, we'll learn from them, but I think we have the right framework now to know exactly, okay, well, these are the buttons to push. This is what you need to look for, which we just didn't have, 6 months ago.
Okay, I'll ask that last question. I think the most interesting part that, I mean, when I got into your business was understanding Hebo. Hebo was a second brand you created, and it took off in a very interesting manner. So while you only have 2 stores in the CBD, when you open up the cloud kitchen in Katong area, it was very interesting that people actually said, wow, Hebo is here in the neighborhood, and then they started to buy it. And you realize that actually people do miss it. So can you just share a little bit more? Because I mean, beside the digital marketing transformation, it's really about the innovation part of things. So that'll be the last question for today. Yeah.
It is. And that's still where, you know, fundamentally branding comes into play. I think in our business, word of mouth, I don't think we can dilute that. I mean, you know, no matter what, people that eat in the CBD talk about it, they spread it to their friends, they take a few pictures. I think that's still, you know, a big way that, you know, a brand sort of comes alive. And for us, I think the product itself, we spent 2 years developing this menu. So, you know, from everything that we had learned with SaladStop, we really kind of refined it with Heybo. So it is a brand that is built very purposefully for delivery. Number one, we knew very much this needed to be a product that traveled well. It also needed to reach a certain price point. So we really challenged ourselves. We said this concept has to be positioned between $9 to $12. And then lastly, I think we wanted to sort of take the stigma away from healthy food a little bit, that it, you know, it wasn't boring. Some people say, well, SaladStop is boring, or it's too healthy for me, right? So we wanted to make it more fun and approachable. So when you look at the colors that we use, the way the pictures are shot, it's a very inviting product. So we spend a lot of time, again, thinking about what the online presence would be, right? Because again, we you know, for many years now, we've known that we would be shifting in this direction. Heybo was an opportunity for us to start a concept from scratch, and using that sort of mindset, I guess we were able to then fine tune every element operationally, you know, how on the marketing side, what the brand would represent. And so when we launched it, I think we were really quite confident that it would do well. But what surprised us is, for a brand that was only 6 months old, how that would then perform on its own in a still a very competitive market, and at that point just purely online. You know, one store in the central business district stayed open throughout the circuit breaker, being completely unknown, and we were doing island-wide deliveries and, you know, able to cover all of our costs.
Yep. And you know, the interesting part is that I think a lot of them personalize the menu based on the ingredient. I remember I was sitting in the Heybo store, and then there's this lady next in the next table and say, this is great for keto. And I think customer knows, they know the ingredient and they know how to hack it. And I think giving them a platform to do it is really important. So yeah, I think we have answered quite a lot of questions today. I mean, Adrien, thank you for being very generous with your time. And
no problem, of course. Thank you.
And I really enjoy our partnership. And to our audience, thank you for taking time today. And yeah, thank you. We'll see you in our next webinar. Thank you.